Okay, so hello everybody. I'm going to start a few minutes earlier because then I can have a few minutes extra to talk. Oh. Yeah, so it recorded me now zipping up my fly and or buttoning my fly also and everything. In any case, my slides are, it's a website and it doesn't seem to be rendering very nicely on 460. So I'm sorry if it doesn't, if the slides don't really appear nicely, if it flows over, they're not that important, the slides. So in any case, let's start. So thank you everybody for coming. My name is JC, and I'm going to talk about Converse, or Converse.js, which is a XMPP chat client written in JavaScript. And 2 years ago was the first time I talked about this project at FOSDEM, where I went a little bit into technical details about XMPP, how it works, and Converse as well, talking about what plans we have for the future, what we're going to do. And now 2 years later, quite a lot has happened, and I would like to share with you what we've done, what we've achieved in the community and in the project. And excuse me, I would also like to share a vision with you to also kind of explain why we're working on this project. And I think this vision is not my vision. It's a vision that many people in this room share, that many people who have been giving talks here share, and that people have had before us as well. And I think this vision is all the more pertinent today because of the state of instant messaging that we have today. We have dozens of chat applications that don't interoperate. We have proprietary silos and walled gardens with locked-in users who have their communications and metadata recorded, monetized, and locked in as well. So how useful would email have been if you could only send an email from a Gmail account to another Gmail account, or from a Proton Mail account to a Proton Mail account? In a situation like that, usually what happens is some player in the market becomes entrenched, the network effect takes hold, and they dominate, and they push out everybody else, and they make it impossible or almost impossible for people to compete or to provide alternative solutions. And so Proton Mail, for example, came up recently, as far as I know, and they have, you can use them, and they are very, they're usable because you can send an email to anybody in the network, or you can host your own email address. Sorry, email address and email server, and still communicate to other people. So this interoperability between providers via the protocol is called federation. And there's no technical reason why we cannot have federation with chat apps or with instant messaging apps. XMPP, which is this year 20 years old, was built with federation in mind from the start. And it supports federation, and it's an IETF standard. So many of the instant messaging apps that are built today don't use XMPP, and they don't federate. But generally, this is not because of technical reasons. It's mostly because you won't get $1 billion valuation for your chat app company if you build it on standards, federate with other people, and allow other people the freedom to build their own front ends and to interoperate with you on a standards basis. So we as free software hackers we're going to have to build these things ourselves. And email as well, to me, is a very good example, because the companies that nowadays provide email and federate, they don't do this because they love federation. They would love to be able to lock everything down and keep it within their silo. And this is, many companies are also doing this. They're trying their best to kind of break email, break the federation. And with with instant messaging, my vision, therefore, and the vision that many others share, is of federated, secure, end-to-end encrypted communication that supports the 4 freedoms of free software, and that enables you as user the freedom to use it as you see fit, share it, use the code, see the code, share the code, modify the code. So, Converse.js is the project that I'm working on, and this is my way of participating in the vision, but it's not the only way. And there are also other people who are doing things. Many of the people who are here or who are talking here are sharing in this vision and participating in their way. It's a web chat, so it's available at conversejs.org, where you can try it out. There's demos there, and it's basically usable on its own. But it can also be integrated into a website. That's how it was originally came about. Was built for, I'm a web developer, and this was built for a client of ours. And eventually it was extracted out and made its own project. It has a plugin architecture, so you can extend its functionality by writing plugins, but you can also reduce its functionality by removing plugins, because the entire code base is built out of plugins, modularized, except for the single common core. It has 131 contributors to date, including translators, and most of these people joined the community and made their first contributions in the last year or maybe last 2 years. It has different view modes, and this is best described with an image. So this is a screenshot of the, let's say, first view mode, because this is the original view mode, and it's called overlay. The overlaid view mode because you have chats overlaid on top of an existing website. So this is a relatively common UX paradigm that you see with Gtalk, at least in the old days. LinkedIn still has it. Lots of support chats nowadays still have this kind of thing where you have little chats. You can minimize them as they're on the bottom, close them, and the idea being that behind it you can still have a website with a document or some other stuff there. Then there's the full screen view mode, where it's basically more used as a standalone chat application in its own right, not necessarily integrating it into a website. And many people are familiar with this, at least this kind of UX paradigm of like a full screen chat app, which was made especially popular by Slack and very similar chat apps nowadays like that. And this was promised 2 years ago at FOSDEM when I talked about it, saying, oh, we're working on this, and now it's available and can be used especially for team chat kind of applications and group collaboration. And then another view mode is embedded, where you can take a specific conversation, chat, and embed it into an existing web page. You just basically provided the DOM element, some kind of like an ID, for example, and it will inject the chat app inside there. And these view modes are just configuration, so it's all the same code. It's not different code that you're deploying to have a different view mode. It's just a configuration setting that you change, and at the moment, if you change the configuration setting, you have to reload the page to have the new view mode. But probably in the future, we'll be able to kind of change on the fly between the different view modes. Obviously, changing from full screen, we have multiple chats open, to this, we have only one chat open. Gets a bit tricky, but could be doable. I mean, it might confuse people if you do that, so you have to kind of figure out whether it makes sense in your case to do context switching on the fly. But switching between the overlaid and the full screen could make sense. So why this project when there are so many other chat apps, and there are also other ones that federate, and there are also desktop apps and mobile apps? Well, it's for me mostly about the combination of all these things. It's free software, so it provides you with the free the 4 freedoms to use, study, share, and improve the code. It's standards-based because it's based on XMPP, which is an IETF standard. It supports federation due to it being an XMPP client. It's customizable due to it being JavaScript, CSS, and HTML, but also because having a plugin architecture and lots of configuration settings. And it's integratable because you can integrate it into existing web applications. And it's built with that in mind. And I'm not aware of any other web chat clients that actually have all of these things, bring all of this together. So that same year when I gave the FOSDEM talk in 2017, at the end of the year, I wrote a tweet where I was saying that I'm going to spend 3 months working only on this project. I was frustrated because I felt like there's a lot of potential there, but I was being held back in a sense by not having enough time to spend on it. And so I kind of made a decision that I want to really prioritize spending time on this. And I first initially said 3 months, and let's see what happens from that. But actually then it turned out into a whole year, and the whole year of 2018 I was working on this project, and I did need to also do paid work, but I generally then declined paid work that wasn't related to Converse.js, and almost all the paid work that I did was either helping people integrate it, customize it, extend it, add features. I also asked for donations, which was a weird experience, and I had mixed emotions about it, but in hindsight, it was a good thing, I think, and donations have steadily grown over time, and they do definitely help keeping the project, like supporting the project. And I was able to live the whole year, feed a family of 3 with 1 income, just working on this project, and I think it was a success, and there was also other results due to that. We were able to make very regular releases that were not always possible when I was working full-time on other stuff. We added lots of features, not just me, but other people in the community contributed as well. Many new deployments. Dele is going to talk about, after me, about using Converse in a project that he's working on, and it's been deployed at mailbox.org, which is a German email client, and being integrated in all kinds of environments. Got new sponsors, and we had really good growth in the community with contributions, people hanging out in the chat rooms, and just people using it, setting up little instances for their friends and family. And I also see this project, I see very much as part of an ecosystem. I'm not trying to dominate or anything. Like, this is just a web chat, and there's other people working on Android and iOS and desktop and all kinds of stuff, command line interfaces and so on, and this is just like a piece of the puzzle. So some of the features that were added, we added in, this is all in the last year, and not all of it me. The full screen view mode was finished, so specifically used for teamchat kind of applications. Updated the UI. That work was actually quite a lot, and it was sponsored by the WikiSuite project. OMIMO encryption, single and private chats. So we have now end-to-end encryption for group chats and for private chats. File sharing, message receipts, message corrections, theming support, spoiler messages. On Mastodon they're called content warnings. And we have a headless build, and the headless build kind of comes back to the topic of customizability and integratability. The headless build is basically, we split the project out to all the non-UI code, and we split the UI code off, so that you can create a build of the chat app that has all the functionality without the UI, and it exposes an API. And on top of that, you can basically build your own UI in your own library, your own JavaScript framework or whatever, maybe React Native or something even. And you don't have to use the UI as it is. So if you don't like the UI, build your own. If you don't like the colors, make your own. Not everybody likes the orange, but I like it. It's a happy, friendly color. We also had, not particularly related to Converse, but I kind of feel like I want to mention it. And Max is also going to talk about that at 4 o'clock, I think. London and Karlsruhe I put on the list because they were kind of sprints, but we weren't really officially yet. They weren't yet official, but put it that way. But some of us got together in London, specifically Wikisuite people, but also XMPP people, and we worked together, and we were like, wait, this is really cool. We enjoy it. We should do this again sometime. And then some other people of us came together at Karlsruhe at a CCC event, and we were like hacking on XMPP, and every time I'm there, I'm working on Converse, and we're like, yeah, we really like this. We should really kind of do this more often. And then Max, basically at Cambridge, he really organized the first proper official XMPP sprint. Well, official, there's nothing official about it except that it was really well organized. And from there on, it kind of took off. Last one was in Brussels just last week, and this was also a relatively interesting one because we got all kinds of client developers together and 1 or 2 server developers to talk about creating a unified experience across different projects. Because this is one of the things that people complain about with XMPP, that different terminology and concepts of the protocol are exposed in different ways in different clients. So we want to create something where there's a bit more conformity with how the chat applications behave so that people are not unpleasantly surprised when they switch from one device to another device or one app to another app. Where are we now? So it's a funny thing with open source projects or free software projects where people look at it and then they're like, okay, it's rough around the edges, or this thing is missing, or that thing is missing, and then they kind of just, they dismiss it, and then 2 years later they might still be saying like, oh yeah, it doesn't have that, and actually in those 2 years a lot has happened, and these software projects or communities, they're like a living entity that's all the time growing and evolving as long as at least people put energy into it. And it's the same with XMPP, and it's the same with Converse. Like XMPP is extensible, so constantly people are adding to the protocol, extending it to do things that people are nowadays more and more demanding or desiring from chat applications. And it's the same with Converse. It's used commercially, very often integrated into people's websites for various different use cases. Lots of people also just host it themselves for their friends and families or for their communities. There's commercial demand. I mean, last year I was working only on this project, and I still regularly get emails for people asking for help. And at the moment, there's more commercial demand for development on this project than there are developers available to actually meet the demand. So that's actually a good thing. It shows also that there's growth. And therefore, I would like to extend a call to action. I've explained the vision that many of us have. I'm sure many of you agree. If you're interested, you don't have to participate in this project. There's many others, but since I'm talking about this one, I might as well ask. If you like this kind of stuff, join a sprint. The next sprint is in Berlin, somewhere in April. Sorry, I don't know exactly when. 29th of March. Thank you. And there's going to be one probably in Paris maybe sometime, and I will probably organize one in Düsseldorf again at the end of the year, maybe in, I don't know, October or so. But we will have quite a few more sprints. There will be opportunities to come and join, and this is nice because you can meet people, knowledge transfer. We're all friendly people, and we like to work together, and we can, the other things you can do at a sprint. You can fix bugs, you can write documentation, develop features, translate it, and other people are willing to sit with you and work together on something, and this is very useful for learning how to get involved if you want to get involved. This project, as many other free software projects, has a need and a lack of people who are really good with UI and UX. And if anybody has an interest in that kind of stuff, and that would also be greatly appreciated. And we have a chat room, XMPP chat room, discuss at conference.conversejs.org. If you go to conversejs.org, the website, and you click on full screen, and you have an account, or you can register your account very quickly, in 2 minutes, maybe 30 seconds. It will, I think if you register on conversejs.org, it will tell you to go there, and then you can very easily, through the UI, just join that chat room. Or open it up in your favorite client. And yeah, ask us questions. We're friendly, and I'm going to be in this room for Daily's talk. Afterwards, I have to leave at about 4 o'clock, I think, today, but actually earlier, 3:30. I might be afterwards in the hallway or so if someone wants to talk. Otherwise, reach out to the chat room, or here are my other contact details, email and XMPP. I really like the federated. I'm on Mastodon. Twitter, I'm almost kind of thinking about teaching Twitter, but I'm still there. So thanks for listening. Questions? Is there any questions?
Hi there. Magically, it's for the recording. Thank you for the talk. You mentioned about contributions about design, UX and UI. What kind of contributions do you need?
Yeah, so the question is, well, he did actually talk into the mic, but yeah, the question is what kind of UX UI contributions are needed? And it's almost like we don't know what we need because we don't have the expertise to be able to say what we need, right? It's, what is this thing, this paradox? I know a lot of people tell me it doesn't look that great, like compared to other applications, especially the commercial ones. Like it just, yeah, it doesn't look that polished. And we try our best, but we're just, the people who are involved at the moment are not, no one's really like a full-time designer or UX expert or so on. So it could be just advice, it could be mock-ups, it could be helping with the CSS. It's, yeah, it's difficult to say what exactly. Yeah.
One question from my end. How many external dependencies have you got? How many external dependencies there are in Converge.js, if any? And is it possible or easy to, for instance, host all of them in one place so that you don't access external JavaScript from your page where you use Converge.js?
Yes, we build, so the question is how many external dependencies are there, and is it possible to host all of it yourself? It's 100% possible to host all of it yourself. It's in the end one JavaScript file and one CSS file, and some font files for fonts. And it does have external dependencies, but they all get built into one file. That file is about 1.2 megabytes. You could probably split it up, chunk it or so on, but at the moment we don't do that. The CSS is about 200 kilobytes or so. But that's the whole application with all the CSS, with all the HTML that kind of gets rendered also included in there. The dependencies are, it's built on Strophe, which is that's the library that sets up the XMPP connection and does the stanza parsing, and not parsing, but the stanza forwarding, sending and receiving. And the framework is Backbone. That's a little bit because of this project was already started in 2013, 12-13, which is when Backbone was kind of in its heyday. Nowadays people are using other stuff, but I prefer to evolve something rather than rewrite, and I think it's paid off. So I'm quite happy with Backbone. It's quite a minimal, small library with low overhead. Coming with that is Lodash, which is a utility library. There's a few other things. It has a fair amount of dependencies, but we're also trying to keep it as small as possible. Probably with Webpack we can do some more tree shaking and to kind of make the build smaller and so on. But I don't think you can get away with not having dependencies. And it is definitely meant to be self-hosted, especially the end-to-end encrypted stuff. a lot of the security properties break down when you rely on someone else to host stuff for you when you have end-to-end encryption, because they can at any time just serve new JavaScript for you that is malicious. Yeah.
One last question here. It's a little bit related to that issue. I would have a little bit problems to just put my GID and password in some web page. I know that Converse uses this only locally in my browser, but as an end user, I cannot see the difference, so that my password is not passed on to the server. So is there any way of knowing, oh, this Converse is really the real one and would not pass my password to somebody else,
Yeah, so
signing or whatever?
Yeah. One thing you can do is to self-host it, and therefore you have full control over it. Another thing you can do, there's been a lot of talk in the community about creating some kind of, a lot of people don't like it, but the idea of something like an Electron app, or a few years ago I integrated into something called Chromium Embedded Framework, which is a similar kind of thing where you can create a desktop app based on the browser. Electron has signed releases, so you have a bit more control there over what gets deployed, and other than that, it generally, it is an issue of trust, unless you make these steps to host it yourself or to use some kind of desktop application, which at the moment we're not there yet to have an Electron app. To putting it, that's mostly what I can say about it. It is not possible to verify downloads or to have signed downloads within a browser without some kind of extension or without something like Electron. And that is something that people should keep in mind, like depending on how they want to use it.